Too hype or not too hype? That is the question. Is my mic muted? It is not. You are feeling like you are confused and lost in this tornado like I am of Sonic news, and honestly, this is unprecedented times. This is like the most dense amount of Sonic news we've ever gotten in a short period, so I can understand if some of you are being driven into insanity. Reintroducing a returning guest, Sonic Freak 94. Actually, just wait. Is it playing? It's playing! Give him a round of applause. It's so great to have. It was so great talking to you last time we did this, and I learned a lot, though being perfectly honest, I had to watch it like 3 more times to understand what you were talking about. Lucky for you, his on Twitter is right above my head, and you can check out the further explanation that Mike provided, which I didn't even ask Mike to do that. So again, thank you for doing that. You did not have to, but
no
it brought it to my attention. Oh, I was even better at being an ignoramus than I thought I was. Now, if you don't know what's going on and why we have gameplay now, Summer Games Fest happened over the weekend, but their embargo lifted as of Monday, and so we have all kinds of new gameplay footage to break down. And the reason we have game devs coming back so soon after the last time we broke everything down is because it appears that there have been some changes here and there. Very small changes, but there have been changes here and there. And that seems to be changing the community's reaction to Sonic Frontiers as a whole, and myself included. When I saw this, if I'm being honest, keep in mind, I'm an ignoramus, so I was very excited that I was seeing changes, even if they were incremental. And so now I've brought people to bring me down back into reality to be realistically hyped and also be able to engage in conversations that can be beneficial for this game's future. I do like how the enemies are really intimidating. I've missed that in Sonic. I have. So design-wise, I'm okay with it. Some people are memeing on them here and there, whatever. But I like the aesthetic change. But game design stuff. What's with the jittering going on? It plays a sound effect like it's supposed to be almost like faking you out, like, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
So it's probably just trying to lunge towards Sonic, but Sonic is actually within range anyway, and so it just kind of stops.
Why doesn't it actually attack?
I don't know. Like, it's just the way that it was written. Although, there's a thing I want to point out about that sound effect, though. I don't know if you noticed. That is totally one of the SA2 menu sound effects.
Oh my god! Okay, you just out-adventured me, though, because I did not even notice that. So, impressive. You're just showing your credentials already.
So this part here, I've got some immediate complaints about this one.
Let's do it.
Unfortunately. So, you'll notice that as he breaks things, right, there are these pieces of this enemy, they fly apart and fly away. But the individual pieces, they're flying away at half the frame rate. So that is an improvement we got from the last footage, is that this is 60 frames per second. But none of those objects are running at 60 frames per second. They're running at half speed. So
is that a problem?
I mean, it doesn't look very good if you ask me. If you use the frame stepping, you can see it. Every time you step, those objects will move every other frame.
So that happened with the boxes too. They were a lower frame rate, but I think that's pretty typical, right? To lower the frame rate of things like that so that the game itself can stay a solid frame rate?
Those are probably physics objects, much like the boxes, right? So they interact with the world, they fall apart, they roll around, whatever. And in game engines, typically your physics time step, which is the interval at which your physics updates, will be slower than your game frame rate. But in order to bridge that gap, usually what happens is they interpolate, or they blend the positions and the rotations of all the objects. So if you're familiar with animation and tween frames or between frames, or tweening,
actually. Okay.
It's the same thing.
So wait a minute, they can do in-between frames that make it look visually better, but it's technically still running at the same frame rate? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Because what they do is they run a logic tick, right? And they say, okay, I know where it was last, and I know where it needs to be, so let me just do all the in-between steps so that it smooths it out.
I like how Sonic appears to have, finishing moves.
It looks pretty neat. The part that doesn't look neat is that Sonic plants his feet firmly in the air. There. Right here.
Oh,
see?
Jeez, yes.
He stands in the air and he falls down.
They probably stick you to the enemy so that it's a chance for you to punch again. You would say, Mike, that in general the game is definitely smoother. You already said that, right?
It is visually, the frame rate, it's definitely faster than the footage we saw before.
And now, is that a rendering video thing, or is this, would you say with absolute certainty that this looks like more updated than before?
Honestly, it's hard to say.
Okay.
It could just be that the footage that was provided to IGN was rendered out at 30 frames per second, and then they put it in their template that was 60 frames per second and re-uploaded it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But this is obviously showing to us at 60 frames per second. Did you see
geez.
that flicker?
Let me see. I think I did notice it when I first... Oh, yeah,
There you
I did.
go. So that looks like a shadow casting bug. Yeah, it's affecting the volumetric fog, and it's also affecting the terrain below.
Okay, here's a positive thing, okay? This is the thing I was like, whoa! But I shouldn't be whoa over this because this is pretty standard stuff. But it seems like the rail switching animations are the right animations.
The thing about that is, apparently, that issue where he was using the wrong animation, I've heard that that's a bug from Forces. I haven't seen it myself, but it is apparently something that happens. So it could just be a bug that carried over, and it's not always going to happen. So that animation rail switch thing, I think that was just a bug. It doesn't always happen. It happens under certain conditions. We're not sure what they are. The animations remain the same. They're still timed wrong, but that can be fixed. That can be fixed, and that can be fixed within a short time frame.
Okay,
It's
so
just
there's
that the
still
animation
hope.
doesn't start soon enough or stop soon enough to match the game logic, and that can be fixed easily.
But it's still reasonable to be focusing on that feedback at this stage, right? What do you think is realistic to be improved by release?
I think Sonic Team is more than capable of improving a lot of the things that we see here before release. It's just a matter of whether or not
They're allowed to?
management sees that as feasible and whether or not they're going to allow that to happen.
Which is why you got to be critical, guys. This is why it gets frustrating when people push back criticism, especially when people are being respectful about it. There are people that are literally deciding what is it worth to spend money on and resources. And when you critique something, you're literally going, it is worth spending resources on this because I will really like it if you spend those resources on it. Coming off the rail, there's not that insane amount of pop-in.
I think it's just the heart moves in a different direction, and it never completely covers that stuff down there, see?
Right.
It was visible the whole time until it went off screen, and everything's A-okay.
So, hey, what about this part?
Ooh. What's happening is their threshold for what Sonic considers the ground is rather, high. In terms of angle. It says a lot about the expectation of the player who recorded this footage, right? Because the player expected to just run right off of that ledge and fall, but then they smashed their face into the ground and were like, oh man, what happened? And they had to recover from that. That's not the expected outcome.
If you had to pick out of those issues that you have that are taking you out of it, and then narrow down the ones that are realistic within 5 months, and again, with your knowledge of what Sega does, I'm changing the question.
So for me, I think the most important thing here that is totally within the realm of possibility to be fixed would be the animations.
Oh my god, you agree with me?
Yeah, I don't expect the cohesion to be fixed. I don't expect them to change their game design and add momentum. That's just not what their plan was. They cannot change that. But animations go a very, very long way, in my opinion, to making a game feel cohesive. It makes a big difference in responsiveness. It's super important. And when those things don't mesh with your gameplay, like this rail switch animation, for example, it really pulls people out of the experience and it really makes it look unpolished. And if you just fix those things up, I think it would go a very long way to make this game look a lot better and be much better received.
You guys know, I absolutely agree. And for the record, I had no idea Mike was going to say that. I had not asked Mike this question until That's now.
Right. When you're making a game and you've got a character controller and you just got this little debug capsule-shaped guy that's running around the scene, and it feels all right, but once you add a character that has, a bunch of really nice animations, and maybe you have the head looking around to point where the character is trying to go, like the player wants to go, and the character leans and stuff, it goes a long way to change the feeling of the game completely.
Yeah, like in Adventure 1 where he actually moves his head to look at focal points. Like what?
Same with Sonic Adventure 2 with the leaning. If you turned off that leaning, it would not be nearly as nice to play. And it doesn't actually change your gameplay, it just changes the visuals.
I think I'll put a pin in it, but don't go anywhere, Mike. We are going to now introduce our second guest, Danny, or Supersonic 68. Yay!
Can I clap too?
Yeah, clap. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, game devs. Game devs in Sonic content. Seriously, this needs to happen more often. Danny, how you doing?
Hello, it's great to be here.
We introduced Mike last time, so people know who Mike is now, but we didn't talk about what you do. The most notable thing off the top of my head is the bumper engine, which is the foundation for many, many fan games you know of.
Probably the most notable one that people know is Sonic GT. That was originally on the bumper engine, which was actually kind of an expansion of the hedge physics engine by Lake Feppert, the guy who is doing Spark the Electric Jester now. So it was kind of an expansion of an expansion, you can call GT. But in my professional life, I work for Victory XR, which is a virtual reality software company. We create virtual reality educational experiences and environments, such as virtual dissections that actually recreate the real world dissection curriculum, except you do it in a VR headset. So there's, it's a lot more cost effective that way. And that's just some of the examples of some of the work that we do.
All right, so let's put that experience to work.
We got analysts, we got Sonic tubers, we got non-Sonic tubers. Everyone's using the word momentum. And from a technical standpoint, and this is going to sound pedantic and nitpicky, but no, I really truly believe that using the correct terminology in telling Sonic Team exactly what it is we have issue with is very important. Because you play Sonic Forces, and some would argue that there's actually too much momentum. When you when the avatar stages, when you leave the ground and you have absolutely no air control after you leave the ground, making platforming exceptionally difficult and frustrating. That is an example of too much momentum. All momentum is mass times velocity. It's got nothing to do with slopes. It's got nothing to do with loop-the-loops or ramps or corkscrews or what have you. Momentum is just a physical body with mass moving at a velocity. Momentum has just become a Sonic fan buzzword that simplifies the nuance of classic style gameplay in a 3D space. But when trying to describe this, again, through a language barrier, to a team of developers, we need to be a bit more precise with our wording than that. So I feel that perhaps Genesis-style terrain physics, or even just slope physics, or pinball physics, any one of those would be monumentally more precise than momentum.
And I'm even guilty of that, saying like momentum, like it's an oversimplification. Right. It's become slang almost. Like people say, oh, it's not really my fault because everyone knows what I'm talking about. And I'm sure people will play this off like that. They'll be like, oh, but they know what I'm talking about. Well, maybe they don't.
It seems like everyone in the gaming space knows what we're talking about except for Sonic Team, but that's neither here nor there. So he's running up.
Ah! Oh no! Ah! No! What's happening? Oh God!
So this thing that he's on, this kind of cylinder thing, notice that it has a tapered drop-off. And because it is a sloped surface, the game logic says, this is slope. Sonic align to slope. Do. So now, of course, I'm a Unity developer, so I'm going to be using Unity terminology here. So if we go back to that metal straight out of Sonic Forces walkway here. Yeah, here we go. So you notice that we got these little divots, these little partitions that separate these parts of this path, right? Mm-hmm. And that looks pretty good. Like obviously these in universe, these metal paths were crafted in a factory. Therefore, they were made modularly and made to link together like Legos. But we got these little bump. Every time Sonic goes over that little bump. You see that?
Yep.
So these are using what, at least in Unity terms, would be called a mesh collider, which means that what you see is what you get, to use a Sonic quote. The collision of the mesh is exactly as it appears. And that means every bump, every tiny every tiny little screw that is sticking out of this surface has collision on it, and Sonic is reacting to every single tiny bump of this mesh. So what I'm sending you now is a staircase from a digital recreation of the Ray Charles Performing Arts Center at Morehouse College. This was very lovingly recreated by the staff at the 3D modeling staff of Victory XR. And so you got this nice little staircase. Now, if we were using a mesh collider, and we had our character controller going up and down these stairs, the character controller would go ba-dump, 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 up and down these stairs, right? The mesh collider perfectly adheres to what the stairs mesh is. So typically what you'd see, and what you'll see in games like Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2, is the second image I posted, where you have a separate invisible collider that you just put on the stairs, and effectively, as far as the character controller is concerned, simply make it a ramp. And then you just go up the stairs. And of course in VR, that's very, very important to have stairs be registered as ramps, because that's up and down jitter could cause motion sickness. If these platforms were to instead just have box colliders, have much simpler collision meshes that overlay over top of it. Like, yeah, you may have instances where Sonic would look like he's hovering slightly above the mesh, but the overall interactions with the surface would be far smoother.
Would you chalk this up as to another one of those things that could be implemented? A collision mesh?
Yes. For objects in the world like these and other ramps, totally, yeah. Especially since you don't need to worry about when you're creating separate collision meshes. That's one of the easiest things for a 3D modeler to do, because all they need to do is make simple primitives that adhere to the outline of it. They're basically making a 3D silhouette of the thing. It's a little bit trickier to do when you're talking about the terrain itself.
Okay, so yeah, what's that about?
Yeah, so you remember that very first gameplay trailer we saw? Sonic runs straight up that sheer cliff face, and it made me want to throw up.
Yes, and he like bounces around near the end a bit.
Yeah, and then at the very top he goes like over that little divot, and it just goes.
Yeah.
Remember that one? And everyone had a very visceral reaction to that. So it makes sense. It makes absolute perfect sense for the terrain to have a mesh collider, because you're not going to make separate colliders for a terrain, especially not one with varying degrees of, different slopes and things. But if this world were built for Sonic the Hedgehog, why is that divot there?
Why do you think they opted for that look, that realistic look?
Well, I mean, because the real world, unless you're talking about the Windows XP background, doesn't have a perfectly sloping hill. There are divots, there are rocks, there are imperfections. That's just how nature is. Does it make for a fun environment for Sonic the Hedgehog to run on? That's the question.
You're getting into like the artistic style of it, so there's going to be people that definitely say to you that like, well, I like the way it looks, and I don't mind that Sonic like jitters around in the environment, but I want to focus in on what we're trying to do here, right?
Yeah, sure.
The context of the video is we're trying to find the problems with game developers that have experience with it, right? So we found one, and we're also trying to think of things that can realistically be improved within the time that's remaining. Now, this is an issue where there isn't a solution, because the only solution is to start over. And so that's where the line is, right? And the message really is, if they're going to do this again, that should be one of the first things they think about, right? Is how Sonic is going to look visually around this world, and can the actual environment support Sonic's movement as they have it now.
Sure.
Yeah. Also, we have a lot more details on Sonic Frontiers and about the things that you can do within Sonic Frontiers, like a confirmation that Sonic has a double jump in midair. Base stats can be increased, like speed, attack, defense, and ring capacity can be incrementally upgraded by finding hidden collectibles. There is also fishing. Don't ask how it works, is what they said. Your guess is as good as mine. That's from Nicholas Serpa from Nintendo Everything. The demo has you unlock the first additional skill that lets you create damaging energy loops by running. The tree had probably 18 or so more skills to unlock on it. Azuka also talked a little bit about how the dialogue will be handled in Sonic Frontiers, which is very interesting. Azuka says, we have employed Ian Flynn, who is a comic book writer, to write a lot of the dialogue for this game. He says Flynn is great at that Sonic voice, and he's done a great job at writing dialogue that feels very much like a cynical or snarky comment that Sonic would say. How much is there left to do development-wise? And Azuka says the team is really working on finishing everything up and finalizing all the work that needs to get done. They're working long nights in Tokyo right now, trying to get us to that point, so we're pretty close to the end right now. There's apparently like, what is it? How many sliders to dictate Sonic's movement? There's 5 different sliders related to Sonic's speed, as well as turning, acceleration, resistance, and more. What do you guys have to say about that?
I see what they're doing. I see exactly what they're doing, and I kind of like it. Hey, Sonic fans, all of you have different opinions on how Sonic should control. So, here, customize how he controls.
If you're so smart, why don't you make them faster?
That's exactly what people said. That's exactly what people are saying in the comments.
If we're just at a point where you can change how fast you are and how tight you turn, I have a lot of concerns for how broad their designs are going to be.
Yeah, how can you have level design with the character controller that can just be tweaked like that?
And so, contribute to the conversation, be critical and hype, okay? You can be excited. You can really be excited, and we're not telling you not to be. We're giving you as much as we possibly can so that you can contribute constructively to the discourse that is inevitably going to happen, despite it not being as viral as a video of me going, Sonic Frontiers sucks! I think it does more for the community in the long run, and so this is what I'm committed to doing. And speaking of that commitment, thank you both for your commitment and joining me on this cause. Before we started recording, both of them agreed with what we're trying to do here. And I have an overwhelming amount of game devs that feel the same way. Can be toxic. Gaming is naturally competitive, and so some people, their mindset is exactly the same as when they're like when they're playing online with people they don't know in a first-person shooter. If you've ever played one of those, the Call of Duty or like any of those, the people on the mic, when you take them out, they're like they start shouting at you, and it's immediately toxic. It's the same energy on social media.
Swamp off Torbjorn, you thrower.
I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about. I understood you more when you were speaking about game design. I have no... But the people are very competitive, and for whatever reason, gaming culture is like that. It is a minority. And so just know when you're running into somebody like that and separate them from people who are trying to be critical, because silencing those people gets us in what is known, very well known, as the Sonic cycle. So let's break it. Let's add, let's build, let's at least have the Sonic cycle grow and expand so we can still be in a cycle, but at least we're covering new frontiers as a community. Yay!
Solid.
Bookend. Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a great week. Peace.